We are taught from early childhood to keep our emotions in check. When someone loses control, the result shatters relationships and professional reputations. Society treats this feeling as a toxic flaw, creating a culture that demands constant, total suppression. But clinical research paints a different picture. Daily diary studies, which track moods over long periods, show a clear divide between the internal feeling of anger and the physical act of aggression. When psychologists monitor these subjects, they find that violent, aggressive outbursts are incredibly rare. Yet the physiological experience of feeling angry happens almost every single day. If natural selection eliminates traits that threaten our survival, we have to ask why it would refine a mental state that tears social groups apart. Our social perception of anger ignores its biological origin. It is a highly sophisticated, deeply embedded protective mechanism that evolved to guard the self when its vulnerabilities are exposed. In clinical psychology, anger is rarely categorized as a standalone event. It is identified strictly as a secondary emotion. Before your heart rate spikes, your brain processes a primary, much more vulnerable state. Usually, this initial spark is an intense flash of fear, a deep sense of shame, or acute physical pain. This animated diagram shows the clinical anger iceberg. The small tip represents the visible, explosive reaction, supported by a massive, submerged structure of fear, shame, and sadness. This barrier solidifies against external threats, preventing the brain from experiencing raw feelings directly. Lashing out is a high-speed defensive maneuver. The brain executes this response to guard hidden psychological wounds, prioritizing immediate protection over long-term social cohesion. This chart illustrates data from daily diary studies showing exactly what triggers that defensive response. You can see the disproportionately massive spikes in anger intensity when the source is other people, or when the trigger is completely ambiguous and unknown. Psychologists explain this through the frustration-aggression hypothesis. Your brain detects an external obstacle blocking a specific anticipated goal, and it deploys anger to power through the interference. The brain also runs a rapid subconscious calculation regarding social dynamics. If it detects a profound sense of unfairness or a moral injustice, the anger response engages. Evolutionary biologists frame this as recalibration theory. We experience anger because our ancestors needed a reliable, high-energy tool to navigate social hierarchies. It functions as a strategic social tool. When someone crosses a boundary, an anger display signals that the violation has been noticed and will not be tolerated. By making the cost of exploiting an individual visibly dangerous, the emotion deters bad actors. This protects the individual's interests while maintaining their standing within the wider group. This recalibration mechanism enforces fairness and ensures the long-term cooperation required for the entire group to survive. The biological system does have a major flaw. The protective emotion of anger can easily degrade into destructive physical or verbal aggression. When confronting the actual source of a threat is too risky, the brain redirects the energy. This is displaced anger, where frustration is projected onto a lower status, safer target, like a child or a pet. Another failure point is a lack of emotional granularity. When an individual's brain cannot neurologically distinguish between feeling mild sadness and feeling intense anger, they default to the highest energy response available. A healthy brain uses anger as an internal warning system. Aggression is what happens when the system fails, turning a protective shield into a blunt weapon. When someone is highly activated, telling them to calm down signals that the threat isn't real. It invalidates a protective mechanism, which only causes the brain to escalate the defense. Instead of fighting the emotional reaction, effective regulation requires identifying the specific blocked goal or obstacle that triggered the system in the first place. Clinicians use cognitive reappraisal to create a temporal buffer. By objectively analyzing the situation, you can pause the impulse to lash out. Mindfulness practices train the brain to observe its own physical arousal, the racing heart and tense muscles, without automatically deploying the defense. This creates a split-second delay. This electrical signal pauses. breaking the explosive cycle. Moving past the cycle of aggression requires us to stop attempting to eradicate anger and start interrogating it. When we decode the message, we discover exactly what vulnerabilities our brains are so desperately trying to protect.